just from John H. Benjamin being a voice in this movie, I figured it would be amusing. But I was not ready for this thrill ride, because aside from him being a funny voice, I had no idea what the story was. And holy crap, I am so glad that was the case. Welcome to Sandwich Reviews. I'm the Talking Sentient Sandwich, and I didn't think I would have this much fun watching Boy Kills World. I guarantee it would still work regardless, but having to piece together the narrative and world was what really got me invested. Despite it being chocked full of cliches, which I'll talk about later in the spoiler section, I quickly grew to care for the characters the filmmakers introduced me to, and that came down to the movie's presentation. Entirely from the viewpoint of the main character, who is simply named Boy, the film is able to depict every emotion he is feeling incredibly well, allowing the audience to get into this adventure easily. While that comes off effortlessly, the main character is deaf and mute, so anytime the filmmakers need to convey his understanding of something, they need to do it visually. The setting is immediately intriguing, making me want to know more about why the world was the way it was, but it was the characters that made the movie entertaining. Everyone's acting is good to great, but I have to shout out Bill Skarsgård, who absolutely crushes it, and so does his younger counterparts, the Crovetti twins. Side note, I saw this when I was looking up information about the movie, but apparently both of them were on set filming. I only knew they were separate people to begin with because of some Amazon horror movie based on a much better Austrian film, but still, I do wonder how much is one actor and how much is the other. But back to Boy Kills World, because not only is the main character deaf and mute, but he's clinically insane. And the entertainment that they constantly drew from that idea was only topped by the miscommunication that comes from his disabilities. And with Archer/Bob from Bob's Burgers as the boy's internal narration, the comedy in this movie is nothing but gold. The narrative gets much more serious towards the end, but up until then, the movie had me laughing out loud quite a few times. With that, I was worried there would be tonal whiplash, and there may be some of that, but overall, I think the movie seamlessly integrates both styles into one satisfying experience. They probably could have set up some of the narrative reveals better, but I was willing to give that a pass because of how fun the whole thing was. The action gets extremely violent at times, but I was there for whenever it went full-on raid-like action, which I guess I should have expected considering one of the actors is from those movies. I mean, some of the scenes were cut a little too fast and filmed a little too close, not making it wholly up to the Raid standard of action, but I still understood everything that was happening. It's not too much of a spoiler, but I need to mention a fight where the boy uses a cheese grater, and let me tell you, I felt every hit. Dotted throughout the movie, and even during the one scene I just mentioned, is lots of CG blood, which did take me out of it, but that isn't to say there weren't any practical effects. Because if you love fun and gory action movies, definitely check out Boy Kills World. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. Now let's get into some spoilers, because surprisingly, there's a ton. I went in assuming it would be full of cliches and unoriginal plot lines, and it does have plenty of those, but there's a whole lot more when it comes to this movie. But the first spoiler that I want to get into is the narrative twists. I should have been more clued into when it came to the main character possibly being an unreliable narrator, but I didn't see that reveal coming at all. I just accepted the reality that the beginning of the movie gave me, and didn't question it once. I thought the shaman was a really kind guy for raising the little boy and training him into a weapon. Why did the little boy survive, and how did he get there? I don't know, I just figured it was a plot hole. I could definitely see one of the Crovetti twins playing the boy in the original flashback, and the other playing the boy in the real flashback. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But the way the movie dives into a much more dark atmosphere once it gets into its third act is nothing but extraordinary. The gray of everyone being terrible is highlighted so well, to the point where I wasn't sure who to root for. I mean, obviously the main character, but I loved that confusion. But before any of that information is given away, H. Jon Benjamin's voice acting becomes much more ominous, guiding him like a demon on his shoulder rather than the boy's own voice. Then, some of his lines are repeated and edited in perfect ways to distort the reality set by the movie. And once the boy becomes self-reliant, that internal monologue is almost dropped entirely, if not for 1 or 2 lines at the very end. The sound mixing and editing was just phenomenal during those sequences, though there was one moment where it flashed a bunch of red images on the screen with ink blots, and that didn't work for me. But everything else was amazing. And that's not even what I came for. I came for the comedy. And as I mentioned before, that also worked. And most of that was from the boy interacting with the other characters in the movie, especially with the people I guess I can consider his friends. I thoroughly loved every moment we saw of them. The one who the boy couldn't understand cracked me up whenever he was on screen. He didn't even have to say anything, although that was hilarious. It was the feeling of a punchline coming that constantly made me laugh. As that one guy is dying, you just knew the joke was coming, and it was perfect. Most of the story was that fun, but the flaws start to show as the movie goes on. The biggest of which is June 27. As soon as she was introduced, it was easy to guess she would be the boy's sister. The movie had even told the audience that she was dead, but why else would a character like that be in the movie at all? Along with how cliched her whole storyline was, her helmet wasn't utilized one bit. It was an amazing concept that was probably thought of at the beginning of production, meant to communicate what she's thinking as she fights so there could be really cool moments depicting her emotion. But instead of the 3 or 4 times that it was even used, that wording on the helmet should have been employed so much more. That might have bothered me more if it weren't for the action. Everything is pretty great when it comes to the gruesome choreography, including some standout cinematography that had me floored, but the ending was something else. I would have been disappointed if we didn't get one last epic fight with the shaman, so when it lived up to my expectations, I couldn't believe it. So now that Bill Skarsgård has proven himself as a leading man, and not just a guy who puts on a ton of makeup and prosthetics to play the weird dude, I'm excited to see him in the upcoming Crow remake and whatever he has in store next. As always, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for weekly videos and reviews, and enjoy a delicious sandwich.